Pretty Dece, here we go. Facebook.com/Pretty Show. It's time to geek out with Josh, your host.
What's up, everybody? I'm Josh Meek, the Uber Geek. Welcome to Pretty Dece, the short show about movies, comics, games, and all the pop culture in between. Today on the show, we're going to talk about comic books because Marvel had a big announcement this week. It started with a countdown, and people had some misconceptions about what the end of the countdown might lead to. They didn't know it was a countdown at first. We'll get into that in a second. But the end result, the announcement that happened, is that J.J. Abrams and his son Henry are going to be writing a Spider-Man comic. So if you've been living under a rock for the past, 15 years, J.J. Abrams is the famed director of television and movies. He was the co-creator of Lost. He co-created the show Fringe as well. He worked on Alias and Felicity on TV. As far as movies go, he directed Cloverfield, which is great. He directed the Star Trek movie, and then maybe a couple movies you've heard of, like Star Wars: The Force Awakens and the upcoming Rise of Skywalker Star Wars movie as well. So, he's done a few things, let's say, and is really kind of known as someone who's very good at creating lore and at world building and kind of creating these complex storylines. Like look at some of the TV shows and stuff that he's worked on. It is really a strong suit of his. And his son Henry is a 20-year-old college student who seems to be this kind of the first thing that he's really done. He's doing this with his father, which is super cool. They put out a video, of course, after this countdown to announce this comic, and it's Henry and it's JJ, his father, and Henry is like adorably nervous in this, and it's super cute. It's very clear that he is very, very excited to be writing this comic. And reading the New York Times article announcing this comic that they wrote up, talking to both JJ and Henry, it's very clear that Henry is a big, big Spider-Man fan. And he's taking this very seriously, and he's very interested in writing this comic. He talks about the fact that, yes, there is undeniable privilege that he has because he is the son of J.J. Abrams. He wouldn't be able to write a Spider-Man comic for Marvel otherwise, but he's excited about it. He wants to do a good job, and this is kind of a thing it seems like he thinks he wants to do, is continue on in writing comics. So what a cool opportunity for him to be a young kid, 20-something, just in college, that gets to write a Spider-Man comic, like a big mainline Spider-Man comic. That's really cool. That's really, really fantastic. Now, this countdown, let's talk about that for just a second. Marvel put up the number 4 made out of a spider web, and people didn't realize it was going to be counting down from 4 at first, counting down to the announcement. They thought it was just the number 4, and they thought that it was hinting at Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4 coming out as a comic book, graphic novel. So if you remember, Sam Raimi directed Spider-Man's 1 through 3. There was a Spider-Man 4 that was in pre-production. They had started casting, a script existed, but before filming it, they ended up scrapping it and going with the Amazing Spider-Man reboot film instead. So fans have been kind of clamoring to find out what's in Spider-Man 4, what's it all about, and wanting to see it, and they thought that this was going to be that. Turns out that's not the case. Some fans are a little upset about that, but I'm excited about the end result here. I think a J.J. Abrams and Henry Abrams penned Spider-Man series sounds really exciting. Now, we don't know much about the series, but let's run down what we do know. We know that it's coming out in September. We know that it is a limited series, so this is not a continuing series. This is not going to go monthly through eternity. It's a limited series. We don't know if that means 6 issues, 12 issues, whatever. It'll probably be somewhere in the range of 5 or 6 is what I would guess. And we don't know anything about the plot. We've seen the cover, and we know, as from their video, it'll revolve around a new villain named Cadaverous, which is a pretty awesome name. We also know that Sara Pichelli is working on the art for this book. She's the co-creator of Miles Morales. She's really great. Her art is really, really awesome, and it should be a really cool look for this book. Unfortunately, they did put out the look of the cover of this book, which is not done by Sara Pichelli, and it is painful. Hopefully, the story and the art on the inside of the book is better than the cover, but that's a pretty low bar. The perspective all seems off. It seems very, very weird. Hopefully, between now and September, that's something that they can maybe punch up a little bit, or maybe the covers from issue 2 on are better. But this one is definitely not the best comic book cover that I have ever seen. Certainly not that great. Nonetheless, I'm still really, really excited about the series. It's just called Spider-Man. So there's no subtitle for this miniseries, anything like that. It's just called Spider-Man. And it should be a big deal. Getting J.J. Abrams on board writing a comic, even if he was, not quite as involved and Henry was doing most of the writing, like attaching a name like J.J. Abrams to a comic book series is a big deal for Marvel and for comics in general. So I'm excited. It should come out in September. We should maybe get some preview pages ahead of time before that, and we can see what it's like. But nonetheless, keep an eye out this September for Spider-Man #1 from J.J. and Henry Abrams. So that's going to do it for Pretty Dece for today. Thanks very much for joining me to talk about Spider-Man #1. Good to get into some comic book talk. If you want to check out all the past episodes of Pretty Dece, like last week's episodes, which revolved around E3, some exciting game news there, head on over to prettydeceshow.com to find all of those. You can also visit the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/prettydece. And finally, you can talk to me on social media. Love chatting with you guys. That's at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Pretty Dece Show.